Hi and welcome. If you're having trouble with your spokes braking, this video might help you. If you can put up with my Tarzan English and any background noises, this is a real workshop. So in this video I will explain how to make your wheels last longer without breaking spokes. And it is a bit counterintuitive, and some major takeaways from this video are that thinner spokes may not be less strong. It is counterintuitive, but I will explain. I will also explain some lacing techniques and some wheel building techniques that can help spokes not break. So let us begin. I have a perfect here real life example. This wheel is for an electric bike, and it was breaking spokes, and they had problems. So the owner asked me to see if I can fix it, and I will explain with this example some basic principles. Let me start with explaining first thing that maybe it's not a secret, but many people don't know that, even many mechanics, that spokes don't break from too much strength, too much force at any single time. That's a very uncommon scenario. They mostly transfer loads by unloading themselves, by getting lower tension and then increasing it. And so how do they break? They break from fatigue, and material fatigue happens when you let me take a spoke, you bend it back and forth enough times, it will eventually break. And the micro bending is what happens when you are riding, if the wheel is not built properly, or if there is not enough tension in the spoke for its thickness. I will explain that also as well. So that is the problem, and they usually break at the stress points, which are elbows and the part where the threads are. Those are the two highly stressed points of a spoke. And here I drew some spokes. It doesn't matter if you have those straight spokes or J-bend. The only difference is that straight spokes are more difficult to find, more expensive, and the area that is mostly stressed, and that is where the end is stamped, is directly holding the torque or the load of the tension. So not a very good idea in practice. In theory, people saw spokes breaking at an elbow, and some think, okay, I will just get those special hubs and straight spokes, and so no elbow, nothing to break. Well, it's not really that the case, because when you have the elbow, then the tension is held by the spoke material at the elbow. But if you don't have the elbow, then the tension is held by this end when you have those straight spokes. So, and that end is just stamped in a machine, and there's a lot of residual material stress, and you can't stress relieve that part. So in practice, not a very good idea. Anyway, so we're looking at, but here I will concentrate on the spokes in general, regardless of that nuance. So we have a straight gauge, I think, if I pronounced it properly, spoke that has the same diameter along its length. Those spokes are not very durable, and yes, there is also a difference between thinner and thicker spokes that are of straight gauge. I will discuss that in a bit, but first let's discuss the swagged, or as manufacturers like to market them, double-butted spokes. Do they have two butts? No, not even an if. They have a swagged midsection, and that section is not created by machining the spoke, by sanding it or similar. It is rolled into that shape, so the material grains inside of the steel are kept intact, and it has a very good strength. But it does have a smaller diameter in the middle, and that's actually helpful. Why? Two things. First thing, the thinner section acts like a sort of a spring or a shock absorber. So when you have peak loads and similar stuff, instead of loading the ends of the spoke that are already at a high stress, you avoid that, and this section will elongate and then spring back. So it protects the ends of the spoke. So even though it is technically less strong, you cannot hang 1000 kilograms on this spoke, while you might be able to do it on a thicker one. This one would probably crack at the weakest point, but as I explained, spokes have more than enough strength. The problem is fatigue, and that is eliminated by having this least stressed section take all the elongation and then springing back, and so the ends are protected and your spoke is a lot less likely to break. There is also an improved version, and that is a spoke that has a normal sized one side, then a narrower midsection, and then a super thick lower section. If I put it into numbers, just a minute, where did I leave my pen? I'm among the most absent-minded people I've met. So this one has 2 millimeters entire diameter, this one has 2 millimeters, 2 millimeters and 1.8. So this is what we're talking about. There are other versions, but I'm trying to explain the basic principle. There are 1.8, 1.8 and 1.5 version if you want super light and similar. I might discuss that later, but this is the basic difference. And this one has 2, then 1.8 and then 2.3 or 2.2 diameter on this side. DT Swiss Alpine 3 version spokes, if memory serves me. If not, it's the internet, people will correct me, that's for sure. So they make that kind of spoke, and this one just has extra thick elbow, and that is intended to help even more with preventing spoke breakage. And the reason why it helps is not because there's more material at the elbow and so the elbow is less likely to crack, but in truth it is because modern hubs have pretty large holes on their flanges where you put the spokes, thread the spokes through, and so it was designed to probably, I don't know why they made it, I really don't, maybe for easier lacing with machining and quicker lacing to save time and sell more in a shorter time. It's capitalism, that's the most reasonable explanation. But anyway, they have pretty big holes, 2.6 millimeters or similar. Again, people will correct me if I got the figure not correctly. So the thicker spokes will bed into those larger holes a bit better, and there will be a bit less wiggle room and micro bends at the elbow, so the elbow is less likely to break. Of course, having more material doesn't harm in this case because we have the thinner section in the middle that relieves it. Some companies, I think even DT Swiss has a version of that, and Sapim definitely does, make spokes that are 2 millimeter all the way and then have a 2.3 millimeter elbow. This does very little to help, and this version that is 2, 2 and 1.8 is most probably a lot more durable, if not as strong, but in practice your spokes will not be breaking with a design like this, and they will be breaking with a design like this even at the elbow. And also this is the other critical area. So this is not protected at all. This is a bit thicker, but it is not a good design. This is an awesome design. This is also an awesome design, but a bit less strengthened at the elbow and not as super expensive. This one cost well over $1. These are about $1 a piece in Germany and in my country when you can source them. While we are at it, I want to also discuss the threaded part. The threads on spokes are not cut, they are rolled, so the material is deformed. Just as this midsection is rolled to be narrower, here the threads are rolled, so some material is pushed in and the other material is pushed out, and it's all put into shape. So the material's grains are not cut across, but they are left intact, giving it more strength and give it a bit higher diameter, so larger diameter. So here we have, if we take 2 millimeter spokes, we have 2 millimeters, and this diameter is just 2.1 or something, so a little bit wider, and that helps better engagement because the nipples are designed for this design. So if you cut the spoke shorter and cut threads and not roll them, you are weakening that part of the spoke, and it is more likely to break at that part. The threads might shear. So That's another interesting point. If you are having and using a machine for cutting threads, make sure that it is a high quality, the expensive one that rolls them, in fact. So that's one thing. Now there are a few things about wheel building techniques that can help, and this is a perfect example. Here we have, unfortunately, only 32 spokes instead of 36, and this wheel is for not gear hub but electric. This is electric bicycle and has a motor in the hub, so a lot more torque than a normal rider would provide. And of course it does have a crossed lacing pattern. I made a video explaining the design and why crossing the spokes gives a better durability and leverage and stiffness and everything good, and why radial radial lacing is bad. So I will make that video pop up in your right hand top corner if I don't forget when I upload this. But I won't be going into those details anyway, just to say that you want the spokes that are exiting the flange to be exiting them, get as close to the tangent as possible, so not straight out but complete opposite. And I'm not sure if you can see here, this is a better example where you can hopefully see that the spokes are exiting at an angle, not straight but almost a perfect tangent. So that's good up to a point. You want to avoid spokes overlapping adjacent spoke holes. That creates other problems, kinking at the elbow and more stress, and it prevents you from lacing it if you need to replace just one spoke. But the other option, and here we have a perfect example because this is not a 622 or 28 to 29 inch wheel but a smaller one, and we have a large diameter flanges to fit the motor, and we have the spokes coming at an angle that at this side does work for us, but at the opposite side you can see how the spokes are kinked as they are exiting the rim. And so when you're building the wheel, you want to make sure that when you eliminate any slack, you bend these further in to keep them aligned as they are exiting the hub flange, as they will sit when you finish it. So you don't want the spoke to be at tension, so when you release it, it will straighten. In its normal form, you want, if it's going to be like this in a hub, you want when you're building it to give it an extra bend so it stays relaxed in that position, so there's not extra stress. And you want to do the same on the exit. And here you can see this angle. So when it's not under full tension, you want to bend these ends by hand to make the spokes align in that direction, and so they are less likely to break at the elbow. Nipples can move a bit to a certain number of degrees, but past that point, as is the case here, you need to shape the spoke to prevent it from later breaking through material fatigue. So this wheel in particular had problems with spokes breaking at the nipple, and the spokes used were like this, thick at the elbow but no relief section in the middle. And what I went with are the only high quality spokes that I could find. The DT Wheels Alpine 3 were not available, so I couldn't go with this, but I went with these that are still narrower in the midsection without the extra beefy elbow. However, I expect that to work okay, to work just fine. And the most important thing, even if I had opted with the spoke like this, the standard straight gauge, or how it's pronounced, the important thing was that I did bother to make sure that the bends when the elbows, where the spokes are exiting the nipple, are shaped. And the easiest way to do that is, you can see here, this crossed pair. You can find several of them across the rim. That's where you get most of the bending, so to speak, and that's where you can easily do it by pulling them against each other. And for these, you have to do a bit of compromise and improvise, but you can get them all nicely aligned, and you should before you bring them to the final tension. That's very important, and it makes a whole lot of difference So I've built a lot of wheels with poor quality spokes that are of this design. The only thing that I can find in Serbia, everything else I have to buy abroad. And such spokes are great because they let you easily see any problems or imperfections in your wheel building technique or lacing pattern that you chose or anything. So it's been a lot of educational for me over the past decades, and that's some experience that I, how do I say, may not have gained had I been able to work with high quality spokes that often let you get away with all sorts of imperfect stuff and 16 spoked wheels and other nonsense, not to mention radial lacing. See that video about why that's a bad idea. And now I just want to discuss another thing, why you might want to use, even if you have only straight gauge spokes, why you might want to use thinner ones on the left hand side, non-drive side of the rear wheels. So this is ideal, but even if you don't have those at hand, for some wheels it's a good idea to use thinner spokes on the left hand side. And even if you go with these, you might want to choose 1.8, 1.5, 1.8 version for the left hand side on rear wheels of road bikes especially. Here we have a hub. Road bicycle hubs with 11 gears have this part very wide. I have a video explaining why that's bad for wheel strength. I'll make it pop up in your top right hand corner. But anyway, sorry, it's awfully hot and humid here, so my metabolism is such that I don't sweat, I shower myself. So that's how it's always been, that's normal. Anyway, they have this section pretty wide, and road bicycles rear dropouts are not super wide. You want everything to be tight and aero and everything. And so the right hand side spokes have a very acute angle when they're almost vertically going towards the hub, and on the downside this is a cross section. That creates a problem because the left hand side spokes, yes, they are moved a bit towards the inside to alleviate the problem, but they still have a lot better bracing angle. And so if I get these up to say 150 kilogram force on some, or especially if they are 130 wide, total width of hub, not the 135, but the old style road bicycles, old style, less modern style. There are 126 older versions and so on, but if we have this space available, and this is super wide 11-speed road cassette that are a bit wider compared to 10-speed and even 11-speed mountain bike, because 11-speed mountain bikes climb over here a bit. They have super large sprockets and so on and so forth. That's for a separate video. Anyways, this is limited, so we are working with what we have, and the frames are usually not asymmetric, and so we have to move this as close to the right hand side as we can, but that usually puts it almost in the center line. And so the bracing angle of the left spokes is a lot better, and they will easily, with as little as 50 or 60 kilogram force, keep the rim in balance. If we put them to a higher tension, so they don't get loosened, unscrewing the nipples or working too much and fatigue braking, especially when they are at lower tension. So too little tension is very bad for fatigue braking, because they will be working all the time getting normal tension, then released. I explained in the first video, I mentioned how that happens when you pedal and even when you just roll on a bicycle. I won't bother you with this, but there is some tension gaining and losing as the bicycle is working. Anyway, so to get the rim in the middle so it doesn't stand in one side or the other and the bicycle is not in balance, the balance difference is huge. It's awful. And so to alleviate that, manufacturers put the left flange a bit closer to the middle, but they cannot do it too much to keep them completely symmetrical, because then the total distance between flanges, the left and right, would be too small, and the wheel would not take lateral loads very well. We will practically be having the rim on just one row of spokes, and it would be flexing too easily. So you need to create some sort of a triangle if you cannot put it pull it from the sides directly. Again, refer to that video where I explained why that happens. So to alleviate for this problem and to have left spoke still be under enough tension to not move, to not completely unload, we can use a trick to use thicker spokes on the right hand side, and that way the thinner spokes will elongate a bit more because they are thinner, and they will with the same tension elongate more and thus not easily get completely unloaded with the same tension of right hand side spokes. So the worst thing is to do the opposite, to make the right hand sides thinner spokes. They need huge tension to keep the rim center, so we don't want them elongated too much, and we want the left hand side spoke to elongate too much, to always stay under tension. I'm trying to look for some sort of rubber here. Just a second. I know I got it, I just forgot. So this is now completely unloaded, this is under tension, and if it gets loose it will be working. Micro bands. We want to keep it always under tension, and to stay as it gains and loses tension, to always stay at some amount of tension. And so having thinner left hand side spokes help to achieve that with the low amount of tension that we have for the left hand side. So that's the whole video. I hope I've explained everything. If you have any questions or comments, you can wait for me to get a shower and then post questions on the BikeGremlin.net forum, because YouTube is awful at finding, notifying and searching comments later for answers, so it's useless. So it's best to post any questions on my forum, and that's the whole video. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in some other video. Thank you very much if you sat through this whole. And again, I understand that this topic is even some mechanics have problems understanding this stuff and the lacing patterns and so on, and there's no shame in not knowing. There's only shame in not being willing to learn. That was written on a board in my elementary school. I'm not that much of a philosopher, so I just read that, and it sounded very truthful and good. So feel free to ask any questions, experiment, try different things, and just remember that many things when it comes to wheel building is counterintuitive, as that first video that I'm mentioning now for the 100th time probably. I tried to explain everything there as best as I could. It's even longer than this one, but I tried to put it all in one video. So that's it now, finally over. Cheers, stay cool.